Now this sure is weird. I have two of the greatest cameras on planet Earth right here at my disposal, and yet I'm still shooting this video on a little Canon M50 mirrorless camera. YouTube makes me do weird things, man. In case you're not familiar with these cameras, I made a video about all the Oscar nominations for this year and which cameras they were shot on. Almost all of the digitally shot films were shot on the Arri Alexa, and the few that weren't shot on the Arri was shot on the Red. But that doesn't mean Red's been slacking either. They've been dominating the Netflix space with shows like House of Cards, Narcos, Stranger Things. If I were to name off every single film or TV show that these cameras have shot, I would literally be here till after dark just going through a giant list encyclopedia. Like, over the last few years, they've both been making big strides on making these cameras easier to access, easier to use, more compact. And finally, it's getting to the point where you don't need that giant $100 million Hollywood budget to shoot on one of these. Maybe you guys have a project coming up where you're gonna either shoot on the Red or an Arri. How do you pick between the two cameras? To be honest, they're very different cameras. Price, picture, how they function, ergonomics. We're gonna start off by throwing on matching lenses, shoot a sequence with them side by side, and you guys try to let me know if you can figure out which camera is which. So here we go. Now, before I tell you guys which one's which, I want to take a little poll. So hit that little icon on the top right and let me know which one you like better, camera 1 or camera 2. And here we go. The answer to which camera is which is the Red is camera number 1. And the Arri Alexa is camera number 2 on the right side. By the way, I didn't color grade any of this. This is all just set on the most common default settings. So on the Arri, it's Rec 709, and on the Red, it's Dragon Color 2 with Red Gamma 4. Me personally, I was really surprised to see how close some of these clips looked, especially when it was bright and sunny. For example, this shot at the beach, if you were to ask me which camera was this shot on, I wouldn't really be able to tell you with much confidence. It was shot on the Red, but if you were to tell me this was a shot from the Alexa, I would believe you. I thought it started becoming a lot more obvious once we started entering different lighting environments, especially when it starts getting darker. The Red naturally adds a lot of contrasts into the shadows, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Red has that natural, moody, kind of dark look that I really like. The Arri stays a little bit more consistently even throughout. It can almost even look like they're on a different exposure or white balance, but everything has been matched. I would describe Arri's look as kind of warm and creamy, but also very saturated with a lot of color, opposed to the Red, which is kind of like a darker, harsher, razor sharp look. And there really is no right or wrong answer on which camera looks better. It's more of a preference, so I hop back and forth depending on the project. Now, we're generally starting to get a better idea of the image quality differences and characteristics of the camera's image, but how about ergonomics? We still have a lot to cover, but let's start with my favorite segment, which is the trash talking. So let's start with the Arri. My biggest complaint is easy, this viewfinder right here. This viewfinder alone is $7,500, and technically you don't need the viewfinder to control the camera. You could dial in all your settings through Wi-Fi, and it has 2 SDI ports, so you can monitor everything through that, but it's still not very fluid to work with. So in general, if you're gonna book out an Arri Alexa, you can assume that this viewfinder is gonna come with it. Now, the eyepiece itself, I really like it. It's very sharp, and also even if it's super bright out, you can just close your eyes and look through it and it's gonna look good, which is kind of the benefit of it over a monitor. If I have to rig the camera up high or down low, it's not really convenient to look through this eyepiece, so you can press a button and it sends the video signal to here, so this becomes like a tiny monitor. But my complaint is that this is a $7,500 piece of gear. That's a price of like a pretty decent camera all in itself, but this like monitor here is just not good at all. It's an LCD screen. When you first turn it on, a lot of times it flickers. There's a lot of complaints on that, and there's a lot of complaints of this cable going down. I've actually had one viewfinder completely stop working on me once after a shoot. Like, it didn't completely shut down the shoot because camera was working fine. It's just this viewfinder that I have a complaint with. If you look at this camera and, you know, pan the camera around, it just does not look like a good screen. It looks like a crappy screen from like 15 years ago. I have heard they are working on a new upgraded version with an LED panel here instead, but I can't find anything online about it. So I don't know, maybe I was dreaming it or something. I really hope that rumor is true because this viewfinder LCD is terrible for $7,500. With both cameras, you can generally get pretty decent focus out of this viewfinder or their Red's monitor, but definitely not perfect. So when you rent these kits, I definitely suggest having an external monitor that's pretty sharp, because with both cameras, I've had times where I was just kind of running through this or the Red's monitor and I was like, this looks like it's in focus. And when I put it on the computer, it just looked very, very slightly soft. It's much easier to see on a bigger monitor. So I always take these out with a full on monitor or have an AC pull in my focus. It's still a little rough getting that critical focus out of this viewfinder and impossible to get out of this monitor. It's good enough for like composing your shot, but that's about it. Most of the time I just leave it as a menu so you can quickly adjust all your settings from right here. The camera itself also has two SDI ports, which is cool that there's two of them in case one goes down or whatever, but it doesn't have an HDMI port. On a bigger set, we would never use HDMI anyways because SDI is just so much more of a solid connection. But for my size, smaller productions, there's been a couple times where I'm like, if it had an HDMI, I would have used it. The Red has both SDI and HDMI. There's also an audio port right here, which I thought would be really awesome because then we could get reference audio, but it's like a very special cable without like a preamp, so you can't just like plug in a random microphone into it. This audio input is designed to get like a signal from like an audio mixer where everything's already preamped and then a signal fed into here. Again, big sets with professional workflows, that's not really a concern for them. We usually slate anyways, but you know, sometimes if I'm just running and gunning with this camera, I just really wish that I had some sort of reference sound so everything would just be easier to manage in post and syncing and all that stuff. Look at this praying mantis that Carrie found.
That's a massive praying mantis.
That praying mantis is acting as a perfect model for us, so we're gonna get a few shots of him real quick. Or her, my apologies. This specific Red has a 5K Dragon sensor, and to utilize the full sensor and lens, we're shooting it in 5K. Let's say you don't want that giant file size, you wanna trim it down a little bit. Let's say we go into HD. Notice it's way more cropped in. Now here's the thing that really sucks about Reds, is if you don't shoot at the full resolution, you're not gonna utilize the full sensor. You're literally just cropping everything out. So in general, if you're gonna be shooting on a Red on RAW, you really wanna just keep it at full resolution so you're utilizing the full sensor and all that glass. Let's say you wanna shoot some super slow motion. The higher you wanna bring your frame rate, the lower you have to drop your resolution, which means the more you're gonna crop. So you're really only utilizing a very small portion of your sensor and a very small portion of your lens, which just does not look good, especially if you don't have that much light. The Alexa, on the other hand, if you drop it into HD, it does crop in, but just a tiny bit, because it still tries to utilize as much as the sensor as possible and then resamples that image into an HD file. So let's say you want to shoot at like 200 frames per second, both of them have to drop down to about HD, but the Arri still utilizes a majority of the sensor and lens, while the Red just like crops way in, which is like a shame to do to the sensor. Another thing to keep in mind is how difficult these cameras are to operate. Let's say you've never shot on these cameras before. Can you just go and rent one and then use it, or do you need to train on it before you go out and shoot on it? The Red, I would say you definitely need at least a couple of hours to just like navigate through the menus, figure out what all this stuff means. There's some new stuff. You're shooting RAW, so you're dealing with like compression rates and RAW codec and, you know, different frame rates and frame sizes. There's quite a few things you want to learn that's very specific to the Red. No one's gonna go get that? Did you guys just not see me throw that ball? Yeah, that's right, go get it. The Arri, on the other hand, may look like a very intimidating, complicated camera, but if you know your way around a DSLR well, you can pick up an Arri Alexa and literally be very comfortable with it in like 10-15 minutes. It's very, very straightforward. You just look through the menu and everything's very simplified. I can tell you, way easier to use than a C300 Mark II, way easier than like an FS7 or FS700. To be honest, to dial in all your settings and everything, I can do the Arri Alexa faster and easier than most DSLRs. It's really, really intuitive. Like when I was going through the menu, I was just able to scroll through and just understand what everything was. The Red, on the other hand, as I was going through the menu, I was like, wait, what's image pipeline? Had to look that up. Color profiles and gammas, like, okay, which one am I supposed to pick? What compression ratio to choose? How does it convert over to ProRes if I want to shoot ProRes? All that stuff. Now, speaking about codecs, Red has a really, really good raw codec. So a majority of people shooting Red shoot with Red code. Red's raw codec is really awesome. It has a lot of detail, super flexible in post. You can change your ISO, your white balance, and a lot of different settings after the fact that you shoot it. If you have a fast enough computer, you could just drop these straight into Adobe Premiere and it'll just play just like any other file. Arri, on the other hand, has both ProRes and RAW as well, but a majority of people shooting on Arri shoot ProRes. They have all the different, 422 LTs, 422 HQs, 4444. If you take a ProRes file from an Arri Alexa, drop it into Premiere, Premiere will automatically detect that it's an Arri Alexa file, automatically apply a Rec 709 LUT to it, so it already looks like roughly color graded, but of course you can always revert back to the log C flat picture profile and grade it to your liking. Hey, why are you breathing so loud? You're messing up my audio. Yeah. Nice catch. And of course there's also Arri RAW, which gives you that full flexibility, but it's a pretty massive RAW format. If you're shooting ProRes 4444, I mean, you're getting so much detail in there. It's very unlikely that you need that extra flexibility. Even Roger Deakins, who just got an Oscar for Best Cinematography, says ProRes is great. Arri RAW does give you that little extra flexibility, but it's not necessary. So most people, especially in my size productions, we always shoot ProRes, and with Red, we use their RAW. Now keep in mind, we've been using the Arri Alexa Mini, which I consider to be the best bang for the buck Arri camera. And we've also been using the Red Scarlet W, which is what I consider to be the best bang for the buck Red camera. But there's still a pretty big difference in price between this and the Arri Alexa Mini. This has the 5K Dragon sensors, but my friend has an 8K Helium sensor, which is one of their higher end sensors. So let's go test that out. You got yourself a ball. You gonna give it to me? Give me the ball. Give me the goddamn ball.
My name is Nathaniel Carter. I'm a cinematographer, and this is my Red Epic W camera that shoots 8K resolution. It's got, it's one of Red's.
Quiet on set!
Sorry.
Guys, shut up, I'm trying to record a video.
Sorry. PETA. Shh.
If you shoot 8K 7:1 with this, the card will last like 8-9 minutes. It's got so much functionality, and the 8K aspect of it will be relevant in 7 years if the camera's still running. I'll still be able to use it. I've had it shut itself off now twice randomly for no reason. It wasn't while I was shooting, it was while I was configuring something. Little problems and glitches, but nothing what has been reported a lot of people experience with Reds, which I know they can be known for.
He's at 8K, I'm at 4K. Looking at some of these super slow-mo 200 frames per second shots, there's really no comparison. Remember that the Red has to crop in, so we're using a very small portion of the sensor, which is why it looks so grainy, while the Arri still uses a majority of its sensor and just resamples it, which looks way more usable in my opinion. Now, if we put a microscope up to the 8K resolution, it's obviously a lot sharper, there's a lot more detail, but at the same time, there's more grain noticeable as well. Looking at the low light scenes here, we definitely see a clear separation in color characteristics. The Red is looking kind of like that yellow-green color, which it's famous for, and the Alexa is kind of more of that reddish blue. Again, there's no right or wrong answer on which one looks better. It really comes down to preference and the project you're working on. Both of these cameras have a ton of flexibility when it comes to color grading, so you could really stylize both these cameras in many different ways, but a lot of the inherent characteristics kind of stay along with it. So depending on your project and taste, I would pick the one that's closer to the look you're going for and work on it from there. So we generally get an idea of what the image difference is like between the two cameras, but what's it like actually working with these cameras hands-on? You go to the rental house, what accessories do you need to book? How do you build it? How do you set it up? We're gonna start with the Red. Now, when it comes to accessories, Red is very particular that you use their stuff. You can technically power this camera off any V-mount battery, but then there's a lot of translation issues. It doesn't tell you when you're about to run out of battery. So unless you're keeping a close eye on that voltage meter, your camera could just suddenly shut off on you. But at the same time, it communicates very well with this battery, and it could tell you down to like the minute how long your battery is gonna last. So that's kind of cool. All the memory is recorded onto these Red Mini Mags, which are not cheap. I was fine all day, and then as soon as I hit that record button, I just get the hiccups. I kind of don't love that these mini mags are exposed, but maybe I'm just overthinking it. Up here, there's an internal microphone, which I love. It does not sound great, but in case you don't have a second AC display, it's useful so you can sync this camera with other cameras or sound. And this whole back unit is a modular system, so you could pull this off and stick on a different one. There's one with XLR inputs, which is nice, but it makes the camera quite a bit bigger. I think this is probably the most common one because it has HDMI, SDI. Also, it gives you just a standard headphone jack and a audio mic input. So I could literally just take the microphone off my vlog camera and plug it in, and I'm getting somewhat decent audio. And my favorite thing about shooting on Red is that it's designed so you can use it as a cinema camera. You can build it out, but you can also use it as a run and gun camera. Right now we're getting somewhat decent sound out of it, and it's not heavy. I can run around with this all day and not get exhausted. But with the Arri, my arm's gonna be falling off. It looks all cool and lightweight because it's carbon fiber and everything, but running around all day handheld with that thing sucks. Now, another thing I love about Red's design is everything is designed to just be directly bolted onto the body, which means no cables that can get snagged or yanked on. But look at this. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just one solid piece, and you could kind of move it around. You don't have to worry about things like flopping around or coming loose or cables getting tangled on stuff. Having everything bolted on. The one thing I don't like is the fact that this monitor doesn't really have a nice safe spot to store. If you're going to transport it, better safe than sorry, and take this monitor off every time. But I'm not a huge fan of constantly threading things in and out of the camera because you can start wearing away at these threads. And also, these aren't just regular hex keys. It's kind of one of these star-shaped tools, which isn't impossible to come by. But my point is, I just wish it wasn't like a very specific tool to take this on and off, which was something that you do all the time. To power it on, you just press that button for a second, and you just give it about 20 to 30 seconds to boot up. Once you're up and running, it's either this button or this button to start recording. But to shut it down, here's where I think it's kind of stupid. You could either go into the menu and navigate your way through to the shutdown, or you can press and hold this button for a couple seconds and power down the camera, which is great because I would much rather just press a button to shut down the camera than finagle my way through this menu system. Now, here's the part I think is really stupid. The first time I started using a Red camera, a couple of the times when I turned it back on, it said improper shutdown and your files might be screwed up. So I double checked the manual, and yeah, I was shutting it down right. So why is it giving me this error message? Turns out if you hold it for a couple extra seconds, it does a forced shutdown in case your camera freezes up or something, which happens, by the way. And I think that's really stupid that this one button, if you don't hold it long enough, it'll just start recording a clip. If you hold it too long, it'll do an improper shutdown. And so that gives me a little bit of paranoia. Every time I shut it down, I press and hold it just until the shutting down thing comes up, and then I let go right away. Then you won't have any problems. But still, like, why couldn't they make that improper shutdown like a different button, like a forced shutdown button here, and then just a regular shutdown button here? Because it's just too easy to do these forced shutdowns, and I don't want to screw up my files because I pressed this button a little bit too long. Now, this, on the other hand, is the Arri Alexa Mini. Now, the Arri Alexa lineup has been around for a while, and they're awesome cameras. But when they designed this, they specifically designed it to be used for when you need a small footprint, kind of like gimbals or drones, stuff like that. Then what happened was that people looked at this and was like, wait a second, that has the same exact sensor, theoretically getting the same exact image quality as its bigger brothers, but it's cheaper and smaller. So Arri didn't necessarily design this to be like the A camera. They meant it to be like a B or C camera alongside like the Alexa SXT or something like that. But who doesn't want Alexa image quality for cheaper and smaller? So people like myself have been using this as the A camera. We just attached this viewfinder, which also has this flip out display. Now, of course, we're already starting to have cables, which again, I don't love, but they designed this camera so that you could tuck this core of the body somewhere tight and control everything remotely. So it makes sense that they did this. Now, both these cameras can run off both V-mount and gold mount batteries, but 90% of Red cameras I've seen have V-mount batteries and 90% of Arris run off gold mount. But if you want to cross over, it's just a matter of switching out this plate or using an adapter like this, which switches that gold mount into a V-mount. So now I can literally just use the same V-mount on the Red battery to power this Arri. See, Arri doesn't really care what kind of battery you put on here. As long as it works, they're like, it's cool. The Alexa Mini runs off CFast cards, but they have to be approved high-speed ones. So Lexar and SanDisk both make CFast cards that are fast enough. I personally recommend SanDisk. I've had the least amount of problem with SanDisk cards. But again, Arri doesn't care what kind of accessories you throw on it. They just say, hey, if it works, which is why I'm powering this Arri off a Red battery right now. Back here is the power on and off button, big record button right here, and a secondary one right up here. And then you have a bunch of quick settings like peaking, false color. You could program all these. I have these to turn the ND filters on and off. I love built-in ND filters. And that's one pretty big complaint I have with the Red. I mean, these, you just press a button and an ND filter will slide in, so you could open up that aperture and do different things with it. But the Red, if you have a cinema lens on there, you don't have just like thread-on lenses. You need to put on a matte box, which makes the camera a whole lot bigger, and then drop in ND filters in the matte box. Now, even though this camera is bigger and bulkier, it is a bulletproof camera, which is one of my biggest reasons for trying to shoot with Arri as much as possible. I made an entire video about how the Red just suddenly stopped working on me and how I had to ship it in. I've already had to service the Red twice already. And you know, some people get luckier than others. I have friends that have been shooting on it for years and never had a single problem, but I've also seen firsthand it just stopped working all of a sudden for no apparent reason. And like another YouTube channel, Linus Tech Tips, they have a video about the Red and they have a huge list of issues they've had.
But from day one until now, we've had such a laundry list of issues with both of our cameras.
On bigger productions, we usually have like another Red as a backup, but sometimes even just like a DSLR, so that at least you can get footage. You're not gonna walk away empty-handed.
Camera's not turning on. All these people are basically just waiting for this Red to turn back on.
Luckily, we have another Red body stashed away. So the Arri, on the other hand, you're not really taking a risk. Like almost everyone I've talked to with the Arri has had a pretty flawless experience with it. I once ran into an issue with this viewfinder, but it didn't shut down our shoot because the camera was still running fine. It was just this viewfinder. But besides that, that's about it. And I've talked to a lot of people about their experience with Arris, and they're usually just flawless. These things can take a beating. You can take this thing into the blazing heat or throw it in your freezer. It's gonna keep running. Like the Red, you're gonna start getting temperature warnings if it's like kind of hot out, and the fan will start blowing super loud. But then if you're recording sound, then you have to turn the fan down, but then the temperature keeps going up and it starts going in the red. Like, what do you do? When it comes to reliability and durability, like hands down, the Arri dominates the Red. Just like you may have a good experience with it, but a lot of people have had terrible experiences with it. So you're kind of taking that gamble. And I think that's probably the biggest weakness with the Red right now. And I think the issue was that they were constantly coming out with a new camera, like literally couple a year. And I feel like that just wasn't enough time for them to perfect one camera and just run it through its paces and test it to make it super reliable before they released a new one. They were literally just like, new one, new one, new one. Now they did just narrow down their product line to just a few cameras, and I think that's a great idea. Now I feel like they can probably just focus on these cameras and just perfect them before trying to just like produce more and more cameras. Fingers crossed that they're just working on their reliability. What's awesome is that both of these cameras can be swapped out very easily between a PL mount and an EF mount. PL mounts are the industry standard for like high-end cinema lenses, and EF lenses, a lot of us already have EF lenses for Canon cameras, so just pull one off your 80D or 5D and you can slap it on this camera. So it's literally just a matter of switching out 4 screws and you can change the mount of the camera. So I love that. Now the Arri Alexa Mini comes in at $47,800 and the Red Epic W with the 8K sensor comes in at $19,500. And this is just for the body. It's not like other cameras where if you have the body, you can generally shoot like this. You literally can't even attach a lens to it. You can't turn it on. You don't even have a place to mount the battery. So let's build this out to what you would kit it out with if you were kind of doing like a independent mid-level production, not like big giant Hollywood movies and also not tiny little films. So let's start accessorizing. The expander definitely definitely needs to go on the red. So you have SDI, HDMI outs, and the red automatically comes with all the licenses. On the Arri, on the other hand, it comes with ProRes, but if you want like Arri RAW or other licenses like 4x3 open gate for like anamorphic, then you need to buy these licenses. But we're gonna leave that out for this one because again, most of us are gonna be shooting on ProRes for independent productions. There's 100 different rigs you can apply to both cameras, but we'll go with a pretty common one for both, just over $2,000 for each. Now we need a lens mount, so we're gonna get an EF and a PL mount. A PL mount for cinematic lenses that you're gonna be using for bigger productions, and EF mount for when you're playing around. You know, you could just slap a solid Canon L series lens on there and it'll look pretty good. The Arri has 3 built-in ND filters, so you don't have to have a matte box, so let's leave it out for this one. But the red, you definitely need a matte box so you could drop in those ND filters. So we'll go with a common matte box, the LMB25, 3 ND filters, and we're gonna go with 4 256 gig cards for the Arri and for 2 40 gig Minimax for the red. The Minimax are expensive, like I mentioned. We're gonna go with 4 batteries with a dual charger, all about 150 watt hours, which is decently powerful. The Arri needs that super expensive viewfinder, that's $7,500, ouch. And then on the red, you have different size options for monitors, but I went with a smaller one, which is 1450. Both require a solid monitor, so let's slap on a 7-inch monitor. And then lenses. Now lenses, you can literally go from $50 all the way to like $500,000. But for this level production, let's go with the Ingenue Easy Series lenses, which we were doing a lot of these tests on. Kit comes in at $33,600. Now wireless follow focus and wireless video used to be much more expensive, but since the prices have come down on some budget friendly options, we're just gonna kind of go in with a low end on this just to get the job done. And of course, taxes. Here in California, there's about an 8% sales tax, but there is a tax break for production. So we could get away with under 4% in sales tax. And now with our total numbers, there is still that pretty big price difference. The Arri Alexa Mini coming out to be quite a bit more, mostly because the body is just so much more expensive. And of course, there's the camera like the Red Monstro that is way more expensive, but there's also many Arris that are way more expensive. So again, even though this is super expensive, this is still considered kind of like the value cameras of both companies. Focus, focus, focus. Right there. I'm looking nice and sharp. I'm actually pulling my own focus with this monitor and this follow focus unit. Both these cameras don't have autofocus, by the way. Autofocus is getting really, really good on like the C300 Mark II and DSLRs, but still hasn't gotten to the point where people are using it in the cinema world. We still generally go manual focus on these cameras. We're shooting on one of the 2 cinema cameras right now. Let's see if you guys have learned enough about this camera to figure out which camera this is. Try to figure this out while I conveniently tell you about Skillshare, our sponsor for today. Skillshare, think of a smarter version of YouTube, literally thousands of classes on everything from business, technology, whatever you can think of, there's a class for it. Now we're on to Mystery Camera B. Premium membership for Skillshare gives you access to everything at less than $10 a month if you sign up for an annual subscription. If you want to learn cameras, filmmaking, photography, just go to Skillshare, type that word in, boom, just tons of classes. If you want to learn knitting, then dude, let's do it, bro. Learn the basics of a simple scarf, sock knitting, triangle scarves, trendy headbands. My broskies and I are getting together later. Knitting party, my place, 7 o'clock. Let's do this. I got a link in the description that gives the first 500 people to click a free trial for 2 whole months. And there's no obligation. So after those 2 months, if you're like Skillshare sucks, then you could just cancel $0 out of your pocket. So, all right. Okay, I think that just about covers everything I'm contractually obligated to say. So sweet. Skillshare, love those guys. Go show them some love. They support me, which supports my rentals and my addiction to buying gear. So yeah, thanks guys. Have you guys casted your votes on which camera do you think camera A and B is? Well, the answer is this right here is the Arri Alexa. Camera B is the Arri. And the easiest way to tell is just how smooth everything looks in terms of like my skin tones, and also the contrast on my face lighting hasn't really changed. But anyways, yeah, there we go. Now let's end this off with the usual, reading some recent comments. Let's see what you guys have been talking about. Over the last 4 videos, every comment has basically said the same thing, which is, you look like the kid from Up. And then everybody upvotes it. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, Russell, oh my God, yes.
In the last video, I begged them to make that not the top comment for this video. So here's the video I posted a couple hours ago. What's the top comment? What's the top comment? Same comment.
Now they're just trolling you.
Oh wait, hold on. It's tied though.
Oh.
You look like the kid from North Korea. I look like Kim Jong-un.
You look maybe Korean, I guess. I don't know.
They probably use this camera to shoot Goku's training with King Kai on his planet.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I don't get the reference.
Well, King Kai's planet is it's circle, so is this about the 3D camera,
Oh,
right? So,
yeah.
Yeah, so King Kai's realm, you can run around his planet just constantly going around.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. I bet he won't heart my comment. I bet he won't. Oh yeah? I just
Boom.
hearted it. Boom.
Proven wrong.
If you give me
there's
a
so many
360
up.
comment,
Movie up. Oh my
Yeah.
god. You guys, you're a bunch of trolls.
You guys, I hate my subscribers. You guys suck. But please don't unsubscribe because I need you guys. But you guys suck. Since we have RJ here, let's go read through the comments from the video from a few weeks ago where RJ talks about his stuntman experience. This is a different format from your normal sort of episode, but I'm really digging it. Both of your chemistry is so good. We have good chemistry.
Yeah.
Yay. I like how you try to give me a high five and I was like, hug.
The chemistry works.
You two should do a part 2 where you do a stunt yourself, Potato Jet.
We've done so many stunts. Oh my god, he literally almost just done.
Right there. No, I'm standing on a little platform. It's very dangerous right here. It's a little platform, okay? We're risking our lives over here.
That was perfect. Well, here's part 2, and there's the stunt. So that just happened.
Look how easy he made that look. If I could do that, I would literally do it every time I go to the grocery store. I'd be like, hey, excuse me, where's the milk? Over there? Okay. And then just, starting from now, there will be more girls subscribed to you because of him.
I doubt that.
He's a ladies' man. Girls just like approach RJ and just go, hey, what are you doing? You come here often? And I'm like, why has that never happened to me? Lucifer season 4 confirmed.
Yes, I was on Lucifer yesterday.
Yeah. You can't say anything about
I
your
can't say it yet, but it was a cool stunt.
when that episode
I broke a
comes out.
nail. I broke a nail.
Did you really break a nail?
Yeah, just the edge of it ripped off.
To end this video off with a bang, I'm gonna do a flip off of this ledge. Are you ready? Oh, yeah. Yeah.